So, random video here. This is something I was talking with a friend of mine the other day. He actually was. We were actually surprised that I hadn't done a video about this person from history because, according to my friend, based on the way I talk about him, it seems like I know more than the layman would. Don't know if I buy that specifically because, well, I'm still learning more and more about Robert E. Howard with each passing day. But I kind of want to talk about him for a bit. He lived in a couple different places for a while. And then eventually he ended up in a town called Cross Plains, Texas, which I have visited. That is a small fucking town. That is a very, very small town. I visited it last year as like graduation present for finishing college. And I'm glad I went. The house is very small, but it's pretty well preserved, I would say. There's some posters there. There's actually some fan made artifacts. Or like someone made a Solomon Kane staff. Like there's a staff that Solomon Kane uses in the pulps, or eventually gets his hands on in the pulps. Someone made a replica of that and gave it to the Robert E. Howard Museum. And once a year they have this little special day there in honor of Robert E. Howard. I wanted to go this year, but I think I missed it because I had to house sit for my grandma. But anyway, Robert E. Howard is basically like think Stephen King mixed with Michael Moorcock in a way. And not that's not a really good example. Like Michael Moorcock is pretty close though to Robert E. Howard. Though I consider him the Robert E. Howard of our time because or the Robert E. Howard that arose after Robert E. Howard unfortunately ended his own life. But Robert E. Howard eventually ended up in Cross Plains. He wrote characters like Conan the Barbarian is probably the most famous one. He had another one called Solomon Kane. There was a movie about him in 2009. Kull, The Conqueror of the Exile of Atlantis, Bran McMorn. There's another one called Black Agnes. Like he wrote a lot of characters. Like he wrote so many damn things. It's actually impressive. I'm actually quite jealous of his output because, as extra credits once point out, he wrote with the fury of a man hounded by demons. Like that's one of the things I enjoy about the pulp writers is when you look at the stuff they wrote, not just is it well crafted and well written, but it was written in a short amount of time. Like it takes me forever to finish a story. Like I've only finished one of my short stories so far, and that was a long one. But anyway, and Robert E. Howard and Walter B. Gibson were probably the most productive of the pulp writers in my opinion. Like Walter B. Gibson, he wrote a shadow story over the course of a week one time. Like he was on vacation one time or on a or doing a reporting job when he wrote down like the notes with a rough draft. And I think that was Gangnam's Doom, which I have a copy of. I'm still reading, but it's okay as far as I can tell. Um, and this guy, he also was a prolific letter writer. Like I think I mentioned this in my Lovecraft video. He was actually good friends with H.P. Lovecraft. These two exchanged so many letters that the letters have been compiled into two books, both called A Means to Freedom, volumes 1 and 2. Well, they're both called A Means to Freedom, but they both have a different volume. I would recommend reading it because when you read these books of their letters, holy shit! Like it feels like we've had a downgrade in writers. Like writers back in the day, they used to sound respectable and intelligent. The ones now, they sound like dumbasses for the most part, or the ones that are still alive anyway. Even Stephen King sounds like a dumbass to me. But H.P. Lovecraft and Robert E. Howard, no. And the funny thing is, Robert E. Howard, as far as I know, I think before he was a writer, all he did was go to his local library and read the shit out of every book they had available for him. And then he started writing stories, the first of which I believe was Solomon Kane. And I consider that his best work because I've read a little bit of Bran McMorn. I've read a little bit of Conan, but I never could finish their stories. Solomon Kane, I think, is the best one because he's kind of like a precursor to a lot of anti-heroes I enjoy. To give you an idea of what Solomon the Kane is, he's like think the Punisher but in a Puritan uniform. That's Solomon. That's Solomon Kane in a nutshell. And the stories are very well written. The Actually, when I was at the Robert E. Howard Museum, I was actually talking to a lady there. I said something to the effect of Walt Robert E. Howard. It was like a painter with words. Like painters make a masterpiece with strokes of in paint. Robert E. Howard made pictures with master strokes of a pen. Like that's how good of a writer this guy was, in my opinion. Like he was productive. He was. very good at what he did, in my opinion. And the sad part is we were robbed of a lot more good stories because the sad thing about Robert E. Howard is near the end of his life, he was only 30 when his life ended. Think about that, just 30 years old. I'll be that age in a couple months. Damn, do I feel old. But anyway, his mother went into a coma, I believe, and Robert E. Howard, who was close with his mother, like she was the one who supported his writing ventures. His dad did. And he was told she was in a coma and she would never come out and she would likely die. So Robert E. Howard unfortunately went into his car not long after that, and the next thing his neighbors heard was a gun going off. He killed himself. He just killed himself. That's all there is. He unalived himself. And yeah, we were not only were we robbed of like a lot of his, and I'm not mad at Robert E. Howard for the record. I feel sorry for him. I wish he had lived a full life. Like I wish we could have lived in a world where he had made a much more of a contribution to the human race because he sounded like a good person from what I can tell. He sounded like a decent human being. Like unlike Lovecraft, and I'll just still defend Lovecraft, but unlike Lovecraft, Robert E. Howard seemed to lack a certain prejudices. In fact, I think he was very progressive for his time, from what I know of him. But yeah, I feel bad for him. I feel bad for his dad because he ended up having to write a letter to Lovecraft about his son's suicide because they were such good friends. And I feel bad for Lovecraft also because I don't know if I said this in my video about him, but Lovecraft in his own life, he dealt with suicidal thoughts. He thought of jumping off a bridge at one point, but his own curiosity saved his life. So imagine you're there. Imagine this. You're Lovecraft. You have this friend from Texas who you don't always agree with, but you enjoy writing back and forth with. And one day you get a letter from Texas, but as you're reading it, you realize it's not from your friend. It's from your friend's dad. And that the thing that you've struggled with in your life claimed your best friends. Like, that had to have been just a heartbreak for Lovecraft. And he also died young, unfortunately. Like, he died of cancer, although he called it the grip. But, yeah, there's also a biography book about him. I don't remember the name exactly. I think I might have a picture of it. Let me see if I can find it. But yeah, he was a good writer, really prolific, and it's a shame he died the way he did. Where's that damn book? Can't seem to find it. Nope, can't find it. Damn it. Well, look up Robert E. Howard biographies, and you'll probably find it eventually. I highly recommend reading it just on the grounds of he was an interesting guy to learn about, or at least I think he was. And it's a real shame that he's dead. Like a real shame. Well, he would be dead anyway. Like the guy was born, lived when World War II, when World War One and Two was about to go. Like he died just a couple years before World War II kicked off. Actually, no, him and Lovecraft were aware of like the rise of Hitler, so they knew about that. But I think it might have been before America got involved that he died. I can't remember off the top of my head, but yeah, I recommend checking that book out. The Means to Freedom and any biography you can find of him. Is it Blood and Oil or something blood? Like it has a picture of him standing in the yard topless toying with a knife on the front picture. But I also recommend reading the Savage Tales of Solomon Kane, which he wrote. I'm reading that myself. I've been reading that as inspiration for the pulps I'm trying to write. He also wrote. There are also 3 books collecting his Conan stories. There's a book collecting the stories of Bren McMorn. A lot of stuff. I highly recommend reading all of it because, again, the way he wrote things was very particular. It was very interesting, and I guess, and he was probably a very passionate writer. That's probably why he was so good. Like I believe you don't do anything good unless you have a passion for it. I do believe that. But yeah, that's basically just my 2 cents about Robert E. Howard. It's just good man. I'm really sorry he's dead or that he died the way he did. I feel sorry for him. I feel sorry for his dad, who lost his wife and his son over the course of a couple days. Feel bad for Lovecraft, but most of all, I feel bad for just Robert E. Howard's fans in general because, again, he was a really fantastic writer, and I wish he had lived longer. Anyway, that's the video. Have a nice day, and remember the game was right from the start.